I'm Professor Amy Keeley, and thank you for joining me on Being Paleo. I'm starting to do my podcasts in video form, and I will be honest and admit that it's for monetization on YouTube. One of the things that I'm doing in Being Paleo is talking about art and philosophy and, um, the Being Paleo diet and lifestyle. But I can't, in the heart of me, get away from business, which I truly love business and I don't like business. So I'm at this crossroads in my life where I want to start to inspire other people with what I've learned, and help other people with what I've learned. So I'm what's called a Renaissance woman. You hear it as talking about the Renaissance man, but believe it or not, women can be it as well. So I, as a Renaissance woman, what does that mean? So the Renaissance man was the type of man in the Renaissance period, which would have been about like the 1500s to about the 1800s, if you will, very loose a range. But that was a period in time where people were interested in a lot of different things and gaining knowledge from a lot of different places. So you might have one person like a Leonardo da Vinci who became a master of everything that he touched. And why, and again, not just a master of painting. He did very few paintings, I think less than 80 paintings. But he did drawings, anatomical correct drawings of cadavers, not because he was trying to figure out how to paint better, which is a lot of people have thought that's why he did it. And that's why some painters will paint, objects like hands or eyes as they're doing their pre-work for doing a painting. He did it because he was interested in it. He was cutting people apart to understand what makes them work, from a biological standpoint. He was drawing and thinking through warfare and doing painting or drawings of helicopters as we know them today, and hot air balloons and scuba diving equipment and things, because he was just interested in a lot of different things. And that's really what becomes, I think, a Renaissance person, is somebody who is interested in a lot of different things, and not just interested in it, but does the knowledge work that it takes to understand it on a different level in order to bring forward different ideas. So um, I've been told now I should write, I think I'm up to 22 books that people tell me I need to write based on my knowledge, and they're all over the place. So a friend of mine just recently said you should write a book about all the books that people have told you to write. And I might have to do that because they're all over the board. They're from ancient warfare, and that was from a conversation with one of my professors in my PhD program where I challenged him a bit. I'm like, okay, so World War II wasn't really the first modern war. Where people were killed in mass. I mean, you can go back, if you scale down the human population on the earth, it's all relative on some levels. So ancient warfare that were using bombardier beetles, which has they spew out a fluid that is the exact same type of fluid as rocket fuel. If you use a couple hundred of those, you're going to burn the crap out of somebody. Or ancient Greek honey was a recipe that would drive men mad if they ate what they thought was honey. So we're not as sophisticated as what we have always been in the past. And I think that's the aha that I gain as I do research for myself, but also for my PhD program, is that archaeology and anthropology now, that we've had years since like the late 1800s of looking and doing archaeology as more of a formal study, we've learned a lot more about ancient people, even like Neanderthals. I am part Neanderthal because I'm European, and I love that about myself. And people are like, oh, Neanderthals. Well, if you did the research on the Neanderthal, then you'd be pretty impressed with them. Like, for example, I say that they were quite cave dwellers, and we think, oh gosh, cave, living in a quick cave. And I'm thinking about it logically. I'm like, how smart is that? I mean, if you have limited energy and you need to spend your energy on hunting food and gathering food, why would you waste your time building a stick structure that requires ongoing maintenance? Like, I live in my house, it requires constant maintenance, of the yard, of the house itself. Like, why would you do that? You wouldn't. You'd find a very well insulated cave, which, by the way, you could put food in there and store it because it's like a refrigerator. It's a constant temperature. That's why they bury food in the ground at a certain level, because at a certain level, it becomes that's the old cellars that our grandparents had that we now don't even have anymore, because we don't understand the concept behind that. Um, but they were living naturally and living with nature. And I don't think that people really understand what living with nature is. Um, I see a lot of millennials that are, oh, climate change, climate change, climate change. They don't even realize they contribute to climate change. They may think that, okay, well, if you do this one thing, this is going to save the planet, without realizing it is a total lifestyle change. Um, I live in a city that has had these monster Bigfoot houses going in. And I look at the people who live in these and I think, you're living next to a 1940 bungalow, a 1.5 story house or a 1 story house. Don't you feel odd living in a neighborhood that the profile doesn't match your house? They don't think about that. They don't think about the energy it takes to maintain a 2,500 square foot house versus a 1,000 to 1,200 square foot house. It doesn't connect. And yet these are the people who are screaming about climate change. Oh, everybody else has to change their lifestyle except them. And that becomes the heart of the problem, is that people look at their lifestyle and they don't really see it for how toxic it is, not just for themselves, but for the world around them. So ancient people realized that less is more. Let me say that again. Less is more. You don't want to drag from one summer location to a winter location. You don't drag all your stuff. They maybe had a handful of garments that they would wear, or they would wear one garment all the time, and I don't know, stocking would take care of it. Now we have throwaway fashion that is sitting in the Atacama Desert because no landfill in America or Europe will take it, because it doesn't decompose, because it's made of plastic. And plastic, don't even get me started on plastic, because I am of a certain age that I remember when plastic came out. Plastic was our savior. It was going to save the world. We were never going to have to use a piece of wood to build a house. We were never going to have to use a piece of wood to make a bowl. All man-made materials were going to be the norm, and we would be able to save all of the woods of the planet. Okay, so let's flash forward, that's 40 years later, 50 years later. Where are we at on plastic? Okay, that's right. It's now clogging up the food chain. We have animals running around with plastic around their neck, cutting off their breathing supply. We now have the first instance of plastic in our bloodstreams, microplastic in our bloodstream. We have plastic that has now decomposed but not gone away, so that it's resting at the bottom of the sediment in our oceans. Yes, plastic was not our savior. And that's what I am interested in talking about in these books that I want to create and write after I get done with the book that's called my dissertation. Is all these different things that I'm interested in, from ancient warfare to spirituality to business. I mean, I dislike business, but I love business. As a marketer, what I've always said is, and I'll do, I'll probably write a book with this title, is that we marketers create the bullshit that you all believe. We are the puppet masters, if you haven't figured that out. And there's a philosopher called Jean Baudrillard. He's a French philosopher that I'm using in my paper. And what he talks about is this thing called hyperreality. Hyperreality is where everything is fake. Now, think about that. A philosopher, and that's what philosophy is supposed to be about, is looking forward to the future, and being able to give insight so that we don't make mistakes and tell you about truth. Okay? Do our philosophers of today do that? No, they don't. They're so big. I mean, and I say that because some of them may have insights, but they're so liberal in their standpoint that they can't see the forest for the trees. They can't realize they've become part of the problem because they're not seeing the other side. Let me give you an example. I, as an independent, and what does an independent mean? For me, it means that number one, from a voting perspective, I do not make a decision until my foot gets near the voting booth on who I'm going to vote for. Why? Because you have all this data and information that comes in through the process of the election process, where people are searching for every little scrap of information that you could think is negative, and then they spin it. Okay, spin it. Spin it in a way that may not be truthful. Spin it in a way that takes it out of context because they want your vote so badly. And then it becomes up to us to interpret what the bullshit is. And if you're not trained in it, you can't see it. So a lot of people who align themselves with Democrats or align themselves as Republican are so indoctrinated into listening to only the people that they think of that they can't hear anything else. So I have a friend of mine who's a screaming liberal. I have my dad that is a screaming conservative. And if I pose, if a topic comes up with my dad, for example, and I take an opposing view on it, oh, there you go, Amy, if the sky is blue, you'll take that, stance. And I'm like, it's because it's there, Dad. You just don't happen to see it. You don't want to acknowledge it, but it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So then to him, I'm a liberal because I have this, I will point out there is another side. My friend who's a screaming liberal, I'm a conservative because I point out the opposite side to whatever he has to say because it exists. So the answer is the truth is somewhere in the middle. And you hear people say that all the time, but you don't really think. And that is what Heidegger, one of the philosophers that I'm using in my paper, and a very controversial person, but he said we've lost thinking. And as I drive around, and I'm going to say this out loud, and I don't really care at this point if I hurt someone's feelings in saying this, because it is my opinion. I have the freedom of speech to say my opinion as long as I am not lying. And so I look at people who drive next to me, who shop next to me, and they are the most profoundly stupid human beings. And I say that in comparison to how humans used to live. And like people who will go across 4 lanes of traffic to get to the exit because they didn't pay attention. They didn't move themselves slowly over into that lane to exit. So now we, driving next to them, are all put at risk because this person screams across the 3 lanes because she has to get to the exit. How profoundly selfish is that? That is stupid. That is stupid to risk yourself and other people around you because you put your time over my safety and the safety of people around you because you need to get to where you're going. When the answer is you have the sacrifice because of your stupidity of driving up another mile to an exit, getting off, turning around, getting back on the expressway, and exiting where you need to go. So you don't want to penalize yourself for your stupidity, but you penalize everybody else for your stupidity. And I am so done with the selfishness, if you can't tell. And that's why I will label it stupidity. I label it stupidity because back in prehistoric man, your life and your existence depended on the people around you. You didn't live unless they lived. So when I look at somebody who's so profoundly selfish that they're not even caring about anybody else around them, I think that's stupid. You are ill. If you brought somebody back from the Neolithic period and they took a look at us, they would say, what stupid human beings we are. We are profoundly stupid. And it comes from a leisure lifestyle. I don't blame any one person for it because it's been this evolution of stupidity. And that's what I'm writing in this book in a much kinder way. And in some ways, I label myself as stupid. So don't think that I exclude myself out because one of the things that I'm very self-aware. I will tell you where I'm stupid. And I am just profoundly honest. And what I've learned about myself, and that's what I hope that you take away from these podcasts and whatnot, is that in order to get better, you have to acknowledge where you're not. And you have to acknowledge the mistakes that you have made along the way. And this is the heart of what I have to say today, is that I am weary of people thinking that they're smart about everything. When you go and you get a degree, you walk out with a piece of paper in an area of specialty, whether it's business or HR or engineering or your IT. That means in that area of specialty, and then there are sub areas of specialty, you can be the expert. But just because you read articles by people who may think they know something means that you're not an expert. Let me just say it. A degree does not make you an expert. Okay, there we go. Cat's out of the bag. Can I say I'm an expert? Yes, because I didn't just take my degrees, which are in very different things that I become expert at. It's called self-education, and self-education doesn't come from reading an article. So let me explain the marketing process real quick, because I'm an expert in marketing. I've won the highest level of award that you can win in the marketing industry, the American Marketing Association Award. That is the Oscars of the marketing industry. I am quite proud, and I will scream it from the rooftops that I'm an award-winning marketer, because why does that matter? That means I have worked hard to understand all the different areas of marketing in order to win that award. Most of the people that you hear talking about content marketing, digital marketing, how they're going to help you, first of all, those are all subsets of what's called supply chain marketing. Supply chain marketing is everything from the beginning of when the product is created all the way to the end, and customer service and upselling clients. It's everything. Everything. And I've literally done everything in the supply chain. And I've watched what Jean Baudrillard, who's a French philosopher that I'm using in my paper, talk about, which is hyperreality. So for example, I'm going to freely admit, and this is one of the books that I'm probably going to title it this way, which is, as a marketer, we create the bullshit you believe. Let me say that again. We create the bullshit that you believe. Since the 1950s, where it became more of a science, going back to the 1800s, people are trying to sell you something, whether it's that their knowledge is great or that their information is better. I'm not really here to sell you anything. My businesses are on my other side. I'm going to do what I want to do on businesses. My businesses, I'm going to be a horrible consultant. I already am a horrible consultant. Why? Because I give my ideas away. You could ask anybody that came into my little vintage shop that I had at one point, because I love a fashion. My love of business was always this little side business that I created. I'll probably bring Nova, one of my former clients, and now she's a really good friend of mine, on one of these podcasts to talk, because at the end of the day, she used to watch me give my ideas away, because I have so many ideas in my head. I'm not going to have time in this lifetime to monetize everything that I think of. I would rather give it away to somebody and watch them thrive. And that's at capitalism is an ism, but it's not bad. I know that socialists want you to think that it's bad, but it's the people that are in these constructs that make them, these political constructs that make them bad. And that's why we'll have a whole conversation about that, because there's no ism that's ever worked. And that's why you hear people say, well, capitalism's not perfect, but it's the better ism that's out there. And it truly is the best ism that's out there. But you'll have people try to tell you that it's not. And we'll discuss that when we break it down to the very basic of knowledge. So when I say knowledge, is that I'm sure employers loved me. My friends love me because for many reasons, but mainly because when they ask me to do something and I've never done it before, I'll say, yeah, sure, I'll help you. Because I haven't equated knowledge with money. I would rather do something and learn it, how to do it, and then how to perfect it, than be paid for it, because I see the future and know that somehow, some way, that's gonna connect in my future. And the same thing happened with Steve Jobs, and I make my students watch his commencement speech where he talks about connecting the dots. He said that when he left school, and by the way, he didn't really leave school, he just stopped paying for school and took audited classes, which means he got a pass or fail from the class. He didn't get a grade. So he took a calligraphy class. He's like, and he said in his commencement speech, it has no practical application. I mean, I can't go out and, I mean, he could probably do wedding stationery with a calligraphy degree, but he is also instinctive. And one of the things that was interesting to me about Steve Jobs is that he's Syrian. He was adopted in the US, but his background is Syrian. And if you know about a lot about the history of this Assyrian people, very rich cultural history, very ancient history. And so he said, that he connected with the idea of doing calligraphy. Well, 10 years later, when he was making the Apple computer, guess what was one of the defining factors that differentiated the Apple computer from everything else? Fonts. Where do you think fonts came from? It's ancient calligraphy. It's learning serif and sans serif and the typecasting and the distance between letters and how words or letters are formed. That is ancient. That is an ancient technology that was created so that people could communicate. But because we're so far distant from that, we don't even really understand what that means anymore. And that's why being paleo is about going back and saying, and in me, I'm rejecting this modern world. I don't like it. The people that want to prop you up and say, oh, but look at all the great things. Okay, so self-driving cars, progress, right? Doesn't look like it's going to harm anybody. Well, congratulations for being a beta tester. You haven't tested the long-term effects on it. Now my generation is starting to see the long-term effects of choices that were made in the 1950s, 1940s. So plastic, for example, was always going to be our savior. It was promoted in the 1980s. Oh, it's going to save us, save the planet. We're never going to have to chop down a tree again because everything will be made out of man-made materials. Okay, well, we now know that that is a lie. We're still hacking down the Amazon forest and our own forests at an alarming rate because we have not stopped using natural materials. So that was a lie. Let's call it what it is, a lie. But plastic actually started earlier than that. Bakelite, and one of the books I'm supposed to write apparently is about my vintage knowledge. I owned a vintage shop, and I will now only buy at like the Goodwills and the, I mean, I make a lot of money, but I will only buy Goodwills and Salvation Army type stuff at vintage stores. Why? Because if it makes it 40, 50, 60 years, it was a quality product to begin with. Oh, but Amy, it doesn't meet the codes today. Do you know, I have watched homes in my own community being built, and I do my own construction. So the answer is, because I've watched and I've had people teach me how to do my own construction. Do I do it all the time? Not all the time. I don't always have the time to do it, but if I do have the time to do it, I will do it. Because at the end of the day, it's the doingness that helps. But I've seen homes built and they're not built very well. And I've talked to experts in the construction industry who are lamenting changes to construction codes by our state representatives, people that we elect to office, who know nothing about the construction industry. So our laws in construction have been devastated. Our laws have been changed so that we can't sue easily our government and our representatives who are designed, and government is designed to protect us. But when it doesn't protect us, we can't use them. We can't depend on them. And if people knew how profoundly broken our government is, just as profoundly broken as education system is, as the healthcare system is, all these major systems are broken. Broken. Did I say broken? Broken. I'm a healthcare advocate for someone who has mental health issues. And I know, for example, that the healthcare system is broken. But when I'm trying to help him get into the system to get help, I told the person who asked me to help him, I'm going to be with this 30-year-old kid for quite some time, because it's not just getting him into a broken system, it's the system itself that's broken. So I'm going to have to be with this kid as he's going through this process of getting fixed, if he can ever get fixed, because the system inside is broken. It's devastating. And I can navigate a system so fast. Why? Because I specialize in broken systems. I specialize in efficiency, of creating processes, of understanding what's broken about a system to be able to fix a system. That's where my area, because I'm a supply chain marketer. So again, let me explain to you about something about marketing. We are the industry that creates the bullshit that you believe. And that's the title of my book. And I say that again, because I want you to realize that it's the marketers that are the puppet masters. We pull your strings. We make you feel bad about something. We make you feel good about something. You will buy it or make a decision off of it. And don't think that government is not master marketers, because they are master marketers. They get you to vote for them, which is also, using marketing. But at the end of the day, for example, Clorox. I should say bleach. I use Clorox, but it was one of my customers. But bleach, look at bleach. Bleach is a toxic chemical. Even smelling it can get me dizzy. I see spots. That's called toxic exposure to a chemical. But I'm now trained to think that the smell of bleach is a good thing, because it means my house is super clean and there are no bugs in it. Why do I think that? Oh, that's right, because they use microscopic bugs that look creepy in their advertising to say, if you don't hose your house down, these could be living in your house. But think about it. Think about this for a second. They didn't tell you that some of those bugs are good bugs, that you have to have them in order to be a healthy human being. So you're willing to kill good bugs as well as bad bugs, because in nature, good bugs and bad bugs fight. Just like rodents and animals have a hierarchy as well. So the good is supposed to get rid of the bad, but if you kill all the good, you can't get rid of the bad. It's why we are having staph infections now that are killing people in hospitals, because hospitals are so toxic when it comes to chemicals that these bad bugs have become resistant to them. Good bugs haven't. They're being killed. Bad bugs just say, okay, so how do I defend myself against this? Because they're built with defense systems, and very, very sophisticated defense systems. So what we haven't figured out as human beings is that a more natural environment is critical to moving forward. And that's what being paleo is about. I am going to be exploring art, philosophy, and in ways that break it down. I'm going to look at philosophers today that I really appreciate, those in the past, and in a way that I think are insightful. And again, you look at Baudrillard. He talked about hyperreality in the 1970s. He said we are going to live in a world that is so fake that you look at a tree and you don't even see the tree. You look at the tree and you see, oh, hey, lumber for a house. Or, hey, can I make a dresser out of that? Or how can I monetize that tree and sell it? Oh, I can cut it up into lumber and sell the lumber. Well, we don't see the tree. Profound. And now we have fake reality. Don't get me started on the Kardashians. That's all manufactured. It is not reality TV as we would understand reality TV to be, which is real in reality. Real because it's a camera following people around. No. That type of reality of the Kardashians is a movie. It's fake. None of that happens. They stage houses. They stage events to keep you watching. That's why you keep watching. That's not reality. It's not reality. Your own life is reality. If you start to pay attention to yourself, you'll realize that is what reality is. And that's where this idea of being paleo comes from. And I'm going to start to do more videos because I do want to monetize things. And I mean, like anybody, I want to live, but I'm different. And that's why I become an Elon Musk fangirl. Because out of all the billionaires that are out there, Elon is taking his money and pumping it back into society. Wanting to go to Mars, for example. I don't necessarily agree with that, but I like the idea that he's taking his money, he's building companies that can help the planet. Whether it's electric vehicles and Tesla, and looking at Tesla himself, we'll talk about Tesla. He's a brilliant genius. I mean, I'd say on par with Einstein, if not more so. But he's doing something. You know, it may not be what I always think that is what it needs to be. Again, like he thinks that we should be going to Mars because, you know, we don't want to kill people on this planet. But natural selection is that Mother Earth is going to shake us off because we haven't been living right. We have not been living with nature. We're not listening to the Native Americans who have lived for thousands and hundreds of thousands of years, more so than we even give them credit for, in harmony with nature. So this being paleo is how do we go back and live in harmony with nature? Like understand what that means and then live with it, which means we're going to have to give up a lot. But are we really giving up anything if we're going and we're living happier? And if we're living healthier lifestyles, are we really giving up? What we are giving up is the idea that this modern world that we live in is good. It's not good. And we humans are feeling the effects of it. We're stressed, we're anxious. That's not a good world. And no matter who's trying to sell you on the idea that it is, there's an agenda behind it. And so my idea of this podcast is to take my knowledge of business and my knowledge of a lot of different things, and let you know that I've learned differently, which is why, I mean, I don't honestly think that there's many people that have people around them, even strangers, who will tell me when I start in this like random conversation about whatever it is I've learned, quantum mechanics or whatever, who will say, you need to write a book on that. Because my insights are based on doing this. I've done it. I've seen where it's broken. I try to fix it for people. I've had people not want to hear me. That's fine. That's your prerogative. But it's hard for me, as I'm now calling myself an artist philosopher, which is what my program has turned me into. I mean, I've always been this way, but now I can carry that label of what a true philosopher is on the ship that Plato talked about. Why no one listens to the philosophers. I'll tell you why. And I hope that I am that artist philosopher that you can listen to and trust and know that I don't have an agenda. If I want to make money, I want to make money like Elon Musk to be able to do something good with it. Because I myself, I don't want the palatial mansion. I don't want the car. The only luxury car I want is a red Corvette. And it's not because I want a red Corvette. It's because my mother had a red Corvette. My mother died 2 years ago of Alzheimer's with sundowners, and she starved to death because someone put her on a medication she had no business being on. And it is a regret I will live for the rest of my life because I let my emotions get involved as I am right now. Somebody made me feel bad. And I normally don't feel bad about my actions, but I let my emotions get involved because it was my mother and I was exhausted at the time. And she starved to death because I wasn't there to make sure her treatment was the right treatment. And I will live with that regret. But what I want to do for my mother is to help other people not live with regret, to understand. And how do you gain your knowledge? How do you become as knowledgeable as I am, that I'm a Renaissance woman? It's not because I'm reading articles, by the way. So if there's nothing else I can tell you to do in today's podcast, it is stop reading the news and think you're learning something. You're not. The news today is written by people who have no idea that they have no idea. They've taught you that that they are the information sources, and they are not. You can take what they've given you for information, but you have to do the work. And that's what this comes down to, is that the days of you thinking that you can live a leisure lifestyle or that you want to live a leisure lifestyle, it needs to be the opposite. You need to understand our bodies are designed to work. That's why you get fat. if you don't eat right and you don't exercise right. But instead of paying a gym membership $80 a month that you have to work hard at a job that you hate to pay that gym membership, go outside and work in your garden. Go take a walk. Go do natural exercises that don't require going to the gym. Go do what I did and buy a boxing bag and hang it in your basement and kick it. I have plenty of moments where I kicked my siblings' faces. And that's how you take out aggression and anger. It's not on the object of your frustration, but on an inanimate object that you imagine is that person. So there are natural ways to go back and live like our ancient ancestors and start to take away what this construct of modern living is like, and stop believing almost everything that you hear. And I'll break it down in these podcasts as I have these things that happen in my life to share where the bullshit's at. Because again, let me, I guess, leave with this why marketing is such bullshit. I was reading after the Will Smith slap with Chris Rock. I was reading that the Academy was polling people within the Academy on how they felt. And they had all these different groups within the Academy, and people were either, it was a horrific event and how damaging it was to them to watch it, and then other people were like, oh, they sided with Will Smith, that he was defending his wife. And the one marketer was polled, and she said, isn't it kind of disturbing that the Academy would actually hire a comedian anyway to insult the very people that they are there to honor? And I thought, there you go. The one marketer has figured it out. Gone down to the basics. Well, everybody's fighting over whose slap was correct or what. No one was asking the question of, why do you bring comedians in to insult people? There are plenty of other entertainment that you can have, or MCs that you can have, that actually host an event like the Academies used to be hosted, where you call the people up, you talk about their accomplishments, you let people see maybe a clip of their movie. Now you've got comedians that are entertainers, if you will, insulting the very people that they're there to honor. It's messed up. But only a marketer saw that. And that's why I say, as a marketer, I have decided to take my superpower, as I've been told, and to do something good with it, which is to help enlighten you on why this modern world is a disaster. We see it, but we don't want to really begin to understand what it is, and we don't want to begin to reject it, and we need to start to reject it, because as Baudrillard said about hyperreality, in order to go back and to get out of hyperreality, of the lies, the bullshit, the fakeness, is to reject it and to walk away from it. So while the Kardashians may seem as entertainment, they're never going to go away unless you stop watching. If you stop clicking on the articles that they get paid for and the media gets paid for, is seeing clickbait for what it is, and don't click on it. So that is my podcast for today. One of the things I said to myself, and I'm going to teach along the way, is starting to set strict standards for yourself. And one of the things that I said is, I get a lot of compliments and a lot of comments from people about putting my knowledge out there and my inspiration out there. And I've just been too busy with all these things, but I can no longer sit back and watch. So I am scheduling a very strict schedule, and I would encourage you to start to schedule your time accordingly. We're so pulled in so many different directions that the only way to deconstruct what we're doing is to put it in a calendar and make yourself do things when that calendar pops up. Don't push it aside. Oh, I'll get to it later. There is no later. You may get to it, but you may not get to it. So I use a calendar where I put all my activities and I track everything in it to keep me straight. Highly recommend that you do it as well. Start to understand what your routine is like, what you're doing every day. And a calendar is a way to be able to go back and look at what you've done, plan what you're going to do in the future, make sure that what you're doing in the future aligns with what your goals are. And that's why I'm becoming very strict with myself now. And you're going to start to see a lot more video podcasts and audio in my podcast, is that I really genuinely want to, and I can't not do this anymore. I have to help people. I have to help people with the knowledge that's in my head feel better about themselves, feel better about rejecting society as it is, feeling better about walking away from toxic family members. We'll talk about all that. We'll talk about how you do art that is meaningful, and that adds, and how to be able to go back to the basics, and how you'll feel amazing about yourself. And that's what I say to a friend of mine all the time. We get into this big debate about it. I feel great when I help someone, when I watch them be grateful. Oh, I'm so glad. Thank you for that information, or thank you for helping me out. To me, that is food for my soul. It is food for my soul. There is not any amount of money on the planet that can make me monetize that feeling I have inside of myself when I help someone. Now, do I want to make money? Like everybody, I want to make money, but I don't want to make money I want to make my money differently. I want to make my money the way I need to make money, where I'm not like this podcast. Somebody else pays me because you are watching me. And the benefit is that you can watch me and learn something from me, but I get paid for it by somebody else entirely. And that's why social media has been great. And I'm now jumping on that bandwagon where hopefully my information is different than other people's information. I don't say stop watching anybody else, because everybody gains knowledge from everybody, but I hope that I'm one of those people that you tune into when I come out with information, and that you may look at something that I'm talking about and say, oh, it doesn't make sense to me, but know that it will make sense to you. It may not happen right now. It may not happen next week, but at some point, the information that I give you will come in handy. And I know that because I've watched it in my own life, where someone has told me a story in business or in life, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, I catalog it in my brain because I don't want to lose that knowledge. And then it comes back even 20 years later. Hey, I remember so-and-so told me about this idea. I could probably do this and make money, or help this person, or whatever. So knowledge is knowledge. And so that's what I hope to transmit to you through these Being Paleo. I've decided to bring my business into it, which I hadn't really planned on doing it before, but I thought, business is something that everybody needs to do, but do it on your own terms. And so I will bring business into this discussion on Being Paleo, so that I can feel like I'm still contributing to helping people be better in business. And I will talk to, one of the things I wanted to do was to critique businesses that I see, not in a way that is hurtful for people, but is in a way that I can benefit them. And that's also a podcast that we'll talk about, which is the feedback loop. Quality management. When I learned about quality management in business, I sucked it up, because it's everything that makes a billion-dollar company. That's the secret. But it's hard when you're a small business to be able to put a quality management system in place. But that is the secret to becoming a billion-dollar company. And hopefully my consulting can help people with that, and I can make money that people want to pay me to help them streamline their organizations, because time is money and time is against us. And so that is the secret that large companies have figured out, but a small company may hear that, but they don't know how they do that. And that's what I hope to be able to share. So thank you for joining Being Paleo. Again, the idea is to immerse you in art, philosophy, diet, and lifestyle, to be able to help yourself find your path in the future and live a healthy and productive lifestyle. But thank you. Have a nice day.